This is an open letter for Miss or Mrs. Christine Sinema. Uh, it's about an experience I've had personally of obtaining a driver license in Arizona and obtaining the same driver license in Florida. Of course, at two different times. But, I used to live in Arizona for 12, 13 years, and now I have been living in Florida for 4 or 5 years. So I have and my situation is such that I have to renew my driver license or get a new driver license every year from wherever I'm living in United States. So that's my situation, my particular situation. So I have this hassle that I have to get a driver license every year, renew my driver license every year, because it's based on my work permit, and I have to renew my work permit every year. So it follows through that since they only give me a work permit for a year, then that means I only get a driver license for a year. That means renew your work permit every year. That means you have to renew your driver license every year. That aside, my experience in getting a driver license in Arizona was, although it was a hassle, once a year go there and spend a day at the DMV and get things out, at least half a day. Although it was a hassle, but it wasn't worrisome. You wouldn't get nervous. It wasn't intimidating. You just go in, get a number, sit in line. They call your name. In a big hall, sit in line with at least 40, 50, 60, 70 other people. After, as you know, I'm sure you're a resident of Arizona. I'm sure at one point you have experience through getting a driver license. I'm just explaining this for those people who haven't been a resident of Arizona. So sit in a big hall with 40, 50, 60 people until they call your number. Not a very intimidating environment, very crowded environment, and in such a situation, crowds is actually good. It puts you at ease. You're one of the crowd, so you don't get very nervous. You don't get you're calmer because you're one of a bunch and things doesn't seem very intimidating. Then they call you, you go in, you provide your information, and they issue a driver license, and the same person who gets your information, prints your driver license and gives it to you, and you get up and you go away. Takes half a day. This is how an ID or a driver license is issued in Arizona. Half an hour affair, not very intimidating. Routine with a bunch of people all sitting and chatting away and watching TV. There are a lot of TV screens in DMVs in Arizona. You just pass time by watching the news on TV. Now let's see what the same procedure, how it's taken care of in a state like Florida. Now, Florida is an example of these southern states which have a large minority of black people, which supposedly, as the Democrats say, are the system is trying to keep them away from polls. And one of the ways that supposedly the Democrats suppose that the system is trying to keep this large portion of large minority of black people away from the polls, one of the ways is to emphasize on IDs and voter IDs and ID cards and driver license, some identification card. That is usually what they mean is goes down to the most basic form of ID is the ID card you get from the DMV or a driver license you get from the DMV. Now these southern states, which Florida I've seen, and I'm assuming Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, the Carolinas, I'm assuming they all follow basically the same routine. What is this routine? First of all, in Arizona, the same DMV that you go pay for your car registration and trailer registration and mobile home registration, the same DMV you go and get a ID or a driver license. But that's not the case in Florida and these southern states. They have two different offices. One is called the tax collector office, in which if you need to pay for your car registration or yearly car registration, or you need to, boat registration or trailer registration, or pay your house taxes, whatever taxes, money related, you go to that. The tax collector's office. It's called the office called the tax collector, and you go there, pay your car registration there, or register your car there. And they have a different office that they call that the MVD or DMV or something close similar to that. MVD, I think over here they call it. That office specifically deals with issuing IDs and driver licenses specifically. So how is it that every time I've been there, I was nervous and intimidated as shit, and I do not have any kind of criminal background, but still I was nervous every time I had to go there. Why? The office is called DMV, MVD, and they only take care of issuing IDs. First of all, it's a small office. It's not a large DMV like Arizona. It's a small office. The most number of people I've ever seen in the waiting area, in the hall, has been like 20, 30 people. And you can't just walk in and get a driver license. You either have to go online and reserve an appointment, give all your information, name and last name and social security number and this and that, just to get an appointment online. Or if you actually go there, they will not take you in. They will not take walk-ins. You actually over there, you have to go on the computer and get an appointment, then leave. Appointment for 3-4 days later. It's like a doctor's office. You get an appointment for 3-4-5 days later and leave and come back for your appointment. That's intimidating. When it's your appointment, you go in. There is a police vehicle right up front, which you don't see it in Arizona. The most I've seen in Arizona, I'm sure there are some police present in the DMVs in Arizona, but they are, way in the back, probably looking at some monitors in some, back rooms. They're not there in a very obvious, intimidating fashion, standing by the door and checking you out. No, that's not the case in Arizona. But in Florida, the most I've seen in Arizona was maybe when it's very crowded, maybe one private security, rent a cop. But not in Florida. Every day, every minute, there's a cop standing there, inside. His car is outside. As I said, there's a small hall that 20 or 30 people, maximum 20 people you see at any given time, because it's by appointment. You already know when is your appointment, so very few are hanging around at any given time. And there's a police office car right in the front, and then there's a police standing inside. So the first thing standing inside in front of his laptop. So the first thing you see when you enter an MVD in Florida is you lock eyes with a police officer who's standing behind a laptop and checking everybody out as soon as they enter the door. Let's assume you have already made your appointment 5 days ago and now you're coming back to, do whatever you need to do. You look at the police officer, but then you go next to the police officer and you talk to a receptionist. You tell them your name and they say, oh, okay, yeah, you have an appointment 15 minutes from now or 30 minutes from now. Here's your number. The receptionist gives you a number. You go sit down in that small hall that is maybe 10, 20 people, other people are waiting. And the only form of, they're not showing you a news in Florida, the MVDs. The only form of entertainment in this small hall with the police officer standing there with his laptop open and keeping a close eye on this small hall. The only thing on these couple of TVs located around the small hall is the TVs are showing the state's wanted, the county's most wanted, the city's most wanted, the unsolved mysteries and unsolved crimes and unsolved shoplifting and unsolved, basically, if let's say if you're from a poor background because you have been poorly educated and also from a poor economic background, you probably have resorted to shoplifting from time to time just to survive or just to keep up with the Joneses. Such a person would not willingly want to come to this kind of environment to then find out whether they're on record to be arrested or not. They won't even approach such a building. You see, the building that is sole job is to issue IDs for citizens so the citizens can be recognized. This building is so intimidating. The environment and how they have set it up is so intimidating that any poor person, any poor young man or women with iffy background, with some run-ins with the law in the past or something on their conscience that they have done wrong in the past, they will not approach such a building. They will not get an ID. Let's continue. So you're sitting there for the 15-20 minutes that you're sitting there. Well, it's a shorter wait time because it's by appointment. So for the 15-20 minutes that you're waiting, you're looking constantly at these monitors and they're all showing security camera captures of unsolved crimes and all unsolved shoplifting and unsolved disturbances. Very grainy, it's grainy, and those pictures are grainy and bad. That's why those people haven't been caught, because I guess there is a problem. That's why they haven't been caught. So they keep showing these videos on the loop. After 15-20 minutes, they call you. Your ID is not issued in the same room. They call you, and then you go to a back room. There's another door, automatic door opens, slides open, and then you go to a back room, back hall, and over there you go sit at the counter that they supposed to issue an ID for you. Over there, they procedure is the same. That you tell them, give them your information, and if everything checks out, they issue you a driver license. But again, they don't hand the driver license there to you. That receptionist who prints it who takes your information doesn't give you the driver license. She says, go outside, the front door receptionist will give you the driver license. So you go from the back room, you pass the sliding door, which, you know, supposedly can be locked behind you at any time. So supposing they find a person that they're looking for, and suddenly that person sits at the reception desk, at the caretaker's desk, and there's all kinds of chance that whoever they're looking for, or what is, even if they're not looking for, it's just a chance that people with questionable background are not willing to take. The guy is thinking that, okay, that they can actually close the second door and keep me in here until they can apprehend me easily, because I have walked with my own feet. I have walked into an environment that there is no way out. So your driver license is not, your ID card or driver license is not issued by the same person who gets the information from you. They tell you go past the second door to the front desk, and they will give you your card. So you walk over there and you see that the place that you're supposed to stand to get your ID card is about like 2 feet away from the policeman who's standing there with his laptop open and checking everybody out. So you stand in front of him. He saw your profile, your frontal angle. Now he sees your profile. The police officer gets to see your profile, and you're waiting for a receptionist to give you your driver license or ID. And you're 2 feet away from the police officer, and the receptionist right here, and she after like couple of minutes she gives you your driver license or ID card, and you thank your God and you walk out of the first door. Ma'am, Mrs. Sinema, you do see the difference here. They have bent backward to make the environment at the office that they issue IDs so scary that I'm almost 50 years old, and every time I go over there, I lose my lunch, just because the environment is just, intimidating. Now you're telling me that, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 24-year-old colored person who's not been very well educated, is people who are not educated well, which unfortunately the system doesn't educate most people well in Uncle Sam's land, because apparently there's no money for education. Who's not been educated well? People who are not educated well, they're very fearful. They become timid. So this timid 19, 18, 20-year-old in Mississippi, in Alabama, in Florida, who's coming from poverty, also timid because he's not well educated, and he's coming from poverty, and because of poverty he has had to resort to different ways of taking care of himself. And this environment of this capitalist environment that get rich or die trying kind of capitalism that is being promoted to the young people, to impressionable young people. So that many of these poor kids have had either running with the law or have done some things in their past that they're not proud of, and they are worried that there might be some evidence. They might have left some evidence behind. There is some video somewhere that has captured them shoplifting a $5 shittle somewhere. So they have this on their mind. They have such things on their mind, and then you tell them that they're worried, as is, that if I go over there, I might be apprehended because I, stole a $10, $15, $20 shoe 5 years ago, or shoplifted a bracelet 10 years ago, and just out of ignorance and poverty. So they have this at the back of their mind. They already know what they have done. Many have had some iffy background because of the system that has kept them in poverty and not educated them well enough, and and promoted the wrong values. Again, get rich or die trying. So they have done some things in the past, probably. Maybe there is no evidence of their, small, petty crimes, but still, they're fearful. And the environment in which it's set up to supposedly give them ID card, it's so intimidating that none of them want to approach it because, guilty conscience, afraid that they might have left some evidence behind, even if it's a grainy security camera photo. So the guy doesn't get a driver license, doesn't get an ID, doesn't get to vote, probably can't get a good job because no ID, no driver license, not even a bad job, no job. So it becomes a vicious cycle of, having kids and kids growing up in poverty, and the kids cannot get even an average job or a bad job because of no ID and because of fear of approaching the ID office, fear of approaching the fucking office that provides ID. Not getting to vote because you fear going and getting your ID because you're worried there's a fucking grainy picture of you shoplifting a $5 toy 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So the guy is not going to approach the ID office, the DMV office, because of this intimidating setup that they have created. So the result is that the people in charge who want to keep these people down, who want to keep this vicious cycle of poverty amongst these minorities, those guys say, you have to have a valid ID and you have to, everything has to be perfect for you to vote. That's those voting laws, those, ID laws for voting. So many of these folks just can't vote because they're, scared shitless approaching the office that issues the ID. So the voting laws, they don't approach the DMV or offices that issues the ID card. They don't approach those offices. The people in charge pass laws and says you absolutely have to have those ID cards to vote. Then it comes to the Senate and they say, okay, the federal government wants to take over and say, okay, no, don't worry about the ID. Bring us, you can vote at home or with other forms of ID, or, take it easy, at least vote. They want people to vote. These, I'm assuming the federal voting laws that they want to pass are trying to, they know what's going on in these states and how the states are making it difficult for people to actually get an ID. Make people fearful to approach the ID office, the DMV office. They know that. So the federal people want to, ease the restriction on who can vote and how strict is these ID cards. And you're standing in their way. And the Republicans want to filibuster this and say, no, the laws have to be followed by in every state, and it has to be strict, and we strictly are going to check IDs before we let fucking people vote. Okay, fine. So the Republicans are going to filibuster any attempt at easing restriction in voting, and you're standing with them, and you're telling them, yeah, that's right. Filibuster should stay on, and therefore Republicans are going to filibuster any kind of easing of the voting laws, strict state voting laws, and therefore, and consequently, a lot of poor people who have had some issues, some runnings in the law because of their poverty, because of their race, in the past, they actually don't want to approach the DMV office, MVD office, because of the, you know, the very intimidating environment that the MVD office has been, you know, creates. Very intimidating environment. As I said, I'm 50 years old, and you know, every time I have to go to the MVD office in Florida, I lose my lunch. Just because the environment is so intimidating. Now imagine a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old or 22-year-old black guy or a black girl with some running in the law in the past, even if it's minor. When you're not well educated, even the minor things you might think that they're major, and you give up your rights, the right to vote, the right to have an ID, just because you're fearful that those minor infringements of the law is going to cause you a lot of trouble, and they're gonna lock you up because you know, shoplifted a $5 handkerchief 5 years ago. So you're not ever going to get an ID. So they won't let you vote. So, you know, you have a minority choosing representatives. Miss Sinema, the way you approach the situation is very out of touch. I have a feeling I would suggest you should travel. I would suggest you know, travel to Alabama and try to get a driver license in Alabama. Travel to, you know, Georgia and try to live in Georgia for at least 6 months to a year. Just try to experience before you take sides in any matter. Try to experience the two sides, and then, you know, make a decision.